Everybody, welcome once again to Two at the First. It's July the 31st, 2024. I'm Ryan Ballingy. Thanks for being here. Whether you're catching us on our live stream across the world or you are catching us as a podcast after the fact, thanks for joining us today. Got plenty to talk about. A lot of it's going to center today around some changes that are proposed to the Olympic format for 2028, some reaction to that. I think mostly positive, and then a little bit of back news about Keegan Bradley getting some, I guess, needed work as sort of a captain, and that's coming up this fall in Montreal. So let's start with the Olympic stuff, because that's really the main event of the week. We don't have a lot going on in the golf world. We've got the men's Olympic golf tournament Thursday through Sunday at Le Golf National. The women take over the event stage Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday morning through Saturday. They have the Portland Classic on the LPGA this week as a warm-up event. Basically, nobody who's playing in the Olympics is competing in that event. That's a long-standing event at Columbia Edgewater Country Club. Great event. But there's 8 of the world top 50 competing, and none of them are playing in the Olympics. So it's a little bit of a different thing for them. And then over on the Korn Ferry Tour this week, they are in Utah for the Utah Championship. And there's a story worth talking about there. There'll probably be a little interlude here between the two stories I mentioned at the top. We'll talk about that in a bit as well. But big news out of, at least reaction-wise, out of Paris the last day or so, has been talk about the pending change to the Olympic golf format for 2028 in Los Angeles. Riviera Country Club is going to host. It's going to be a great venue, incredible. Once again, having a regular tour stop, just like Le Golf National, hosting an event, but one that's quite prestigious, one that's going to host majors, one that's hosted majors. It's a big deal. So what is expected to come along, the proposal will be taken up probably sometime early next year with the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, put forth by the IGF, which is the International Golf Federation, basically the group golf invented to have a governing body for Olympic golf. They want to put forward this idea of having a team event of some kind in the 2028 games. They want it to be a mixed team event of some fashion, probably like a 2-round event where you have one day of 4-ball, one day of 4-sums kind of thing. It would be probably stroke play, because otherwise it would probably take too long to do the match play component of it. You would have men and women teamed up. So for the countries that had at least one player from each country competing, they would be paired up. If you have multiple players, then I guess you would find a way to pair them up, I assume based on ranking. So, Scotty Scheffler would play with Nelly Korda because they're the 2 highest ranked American players in the field. I assume that's how they would do it. I guess you could do it other ways, but that's what I'm guessing. We don't have enough details about this to know. But at least from the Associated Press, what they've kind of put forward, and they did this, I think, a couple of months ago when they broke the story of they want to have some kind of team golf component here. Ideally, they want a mixed team component to come along for Los Angeles. I think that's a great thing. I think that's what this should have been, frankly, all along. I would have preferred this to be a match play format of some kind if they were going to just keep doing these men's and women's tournaments for individuals separately. You'd have 36 holes of qualifying. You get it down to 8 players. You play an 8 and a 4, and then have a final match. The last day you'd have a gold medal match, and you would have a bronze medal match. You'd have 2 matches at the end, and you could do that pretty quickly. And I think that'd be really interesting. And you could still do that over 4 days, but then you would have to fit in this mixed component. And I still think you could actually do this blending match play and stroke play and make it really interesting. You could still have the same number of qualifying players. You could have 60 players for the men's field, 60 players for the women's field. There does not have to be direct overlap. So if there's not a match for all 60 men from another country from the 60 women, that doesn't have to happen. Doesn't have to work out that way. But you could have those 2 events played. You could know up front, hey, Scotty Scheffler is on the same team as Nelly Korda. They go out in 120 players, and they go and play 2 days of golf, right? And they have those 2 days effectively decide who wins that competition. That's how I would do it, because then you could streamline it. You know who wins. You know what you're playing for. You're playing for 2 events effectively at the same time, because you're playing for the team component and you are playing for the individual component. And then you would have your cut down to your top 8 men and your top 8 women. You would have your quarterfinal matches on that day, have all 8 of them because you have 16 players. You'd pare it down to semis. You'd play the semis on Saturday, and then the final day would be championship and bronze medal matches for both men and women individually. So you could crown a team champion over 36 holes of stroke play. And you could do this with better ball. That would be totally fine. I don't think anyone would be really mad about that. I know people love alternate shot. I love alternate shot. It's a lot of fun, but it's also a really hard format, and it does not lend itself to any kind of crossover whatsoever, right? You can't play alternate shot and also play your own ball at the same time. Doesn't work that way. So this idea of trying to, and I should step back and say, I'm trying to say this, trying to appease the golfers, because the pushback from the players that talked the last couple of days about this, I think about Xander Schauffele, I think about Minwoo Lee, the pushback from those players has been, that's a lot of golf. And it makes them sound like wusses, to be honest with you. Like, what, you're getting to play the Olympics every 4 years. What are you mad about another 18 holes? But Xander Schauffele seems to believe this idea that if you required players to play more golf than in the Olympics, then they would just not play, especially in the men's side. I don't think that would be really as true on the women's side, but on the men's side, I think he is of the belief that some of the men would go, "Oh no, it's a lot of golf. I can't do it." And what I would say to that is, you guys used to play in the match play, right? Like, you used to play in the Dell Technologies match play, where you had, like, if you were guaranteed 3 rounds and then you got out of the group stage, then you could have 7 matches in what, like 5 to 8, like an insane amount of golf. What are you talking about? So the whole idea that you can't entice players to compete in more than 4 rounds is kind of insane. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they're not willing to do that. All right, we'll make it 5 rounds. You have a men's and women's individual tournament. You have a team tournament at the same time, mixed tournament at the same time. Do it that way. I'm absolutely fine with that. I think everyone would be fine with that, because I think the team component is really good, and the player reaction to it all seems to back that up. They all seem to say, hey, we're really big fans of this team idea, for a variety of reasons. I mean, they can imagine it being alternate shots, so they don't have to hit as many shots. They could imagine taking the pressure off to a degree. But also, I think a lot of them who competed in the Grant Thornton Invitational in the fall, the first iteration of that, I think a lot of them were invigorated by playing with a female player. Because the one thing I noticed in watching that event last December was there were a lot of PGA Tour players who came into the event paired with an LPGA player, thinking, I'm just going to kind of mail this in, and she's probably going to too, and we'll see what happens. And if we win, we win. But the LPGA players, by and large, came in really interested in playing. This was a good opportunity for them to play for a substantial amount more money than the average person in the LPGA week to week. And they got to play in front of a bigger audience. It's a great opportunity. They were into it. And I think that enthused a number of the PGA Tour players who they were playing with. And the end result was, you could see kind of happening in real time, the PGA Tour players going, hey, this is really fun. I could get into this. I'm going to get into it. I will play for you. I'm going to play for a team. Let's have fun. Let's go win this thing. And I think that made the second day and the third day super interesting. So I would tend to believe that that same kind of infectious enthusiasm can happen for those top players who would be competing in a mixed event at potentially the same time as an individual, a qualifying event, at least. I think that would be a good way to do it. That gives you extra time of golf too. I think that's one thing I've noticed a lot about how I view the Olympics. It is really hard for me to watch a sport that's on maybe one of the days, maybe 2 of the days, because there's so much other stuff going on. You have gymnastics for what, like 4 nights, 3 nights, right? Between the men and the women, you've got the men's team qualification, you've got the men's team final, you've got the men's individual stuff, and that all around includes in that. Then you've got the women's team qualifying, women's team final, women's individual, and all around. That's 6 days of gymnastics. And no one gets sick of that. No one's mad about that. And those people are doing some freaky stuff that can really hurt themselves. But because this is their stage, their ultimate stage every 4 years, they're willing to put themselves through it. I realize golf has different stages, right? We've got our major championships, and more akin to tennis, where there are a lot of top players who have bowed out of playing in Olympic tennis because they want to take a break. They've got slams. They only care about slams. They don't care about medals. But what tennis has done to adapt that to a degree It's one, just say, hey, like this is supposed to be fun. We shorten the events, make them best of 3 sets. We're not playing best of 5. We can have mixed doubles. We can have other doubles. You can have those kinds of fantasy doubles teams. When would you otherwise have Carlos Alcaraz and Rafael Nadal playing together? Obviously, Nadal's retiring, but when would you have those kinds of things happen? But for the Olympics, because they were both top players in the world, they're not going to go play doubles at Roland Garros or Wimbledon or whatever. They don't have time for that. They're too busy trying to win their own thing. In this, it's fun. Have a good time. Go win a medal. Have a blast. I think if we set up golf that way, so that you have, maybe if you want to keep the idea of individual tournaments more full, and you take out the match play component of it, and you just keep them stroke play, and that's fine. I don't love it, but it's fine. Then maybe you do 36 holes of just mixed doubles, right? You have 1 day of alternate shot, 1 day of best ball that determines the winner of that, and then you have a 54-hole tournament to determine the Olympic champion. I know that's anathema. I know the live golf people are like, yeah, he finally said 54 holes would be fun. And I think really my gripe with live has always been the financing. Like 54 holes, we can have those sometimes. But the 54 hole idea plus 36 holes, that gets you to 90 holes, right? That's 5 rounds of golf. That's not 8 rounds of golf. That's 7 rounds of golf. That's something I think pretty much any top player can be amenable to, knowing that one of those rounds is going to be alternate shots. So you're not even hitting shots the whole time. And the other is best ball, which is meant to be fun. And you're not going to always hit shots there either, because you may be out of the hole or what have you. So there's, I think, enough there to say, all right, let's take 1 round out of the individual events. Let's have a 36-hole tournament for the mixed competition. Award 3 medals out of it all, right? 3 championships, so to speak, and go from there. I think that is the way forward. I think that is the right answer. And it seems like at least the men are excited about that prospect. I'm sure the women will be too. We will hear more about that from them. Probably some this week on the LPGA in Portland, but also definitely next week in France, because they'll be asked the same set of questions about the future of the Olympic format. I wish we had never gotten stuck into 72 holes individual stroke play in the first place. That's every single week on every single major tour. We see that all the time. That doesn't make that unique or special. And the field composition piece of it, I get why they do it, because it's the Olympics. You want to have lots of countries represented, but that takes away from the quality of the field. So if you're going to do that, why not present a format that's different, encourages team play, and encourages a reason to root for your country, thinking you might have a chance. If we play enough holes of golf, Scotty Scheffler is going to beat everybody in that field. Right? Eventually, he's going to. But in a team event where Scotty Scheffler plus someone else, again, let's just say Nelly Korda, right, that's probably an unfair juggernaut. But given the formats of best ball and alternate shot are just weird enough that maybe they don't win, especially in a 36-hole short form format. Make it fun, engage other countries, make the Olympics something different. I hope that's what they land on, something different. It's not that it's bad. I love that the Olympics are in golf, and they should have as many days of Olympic golf as humanly possible. And that could mean also having long drive contests. That could mean having short game competitions. Why not? And I had someone push back to me on Twitter the other day saying, well, that's insane. Why would you want that? Might as well just do this, and that. I'm like, yeah, bring it on. This is the Olympics, man. We can award medals for whatever the hell we want, as long as we get IOC approval as a sport. So why not do things that are different? Why not crown the best short game player in the world? Why not do golf horse? Like have a driving range, and you're like, yeah, that 75-yard shot, whoever's the closest, it's HORSA. Do that. I don't care. Engage the game. Make people realize we're just not a sport that plays one format and can be played one way. That's how you get people interested in it. That's how you attract other people to compete in your game. Letting them know it's accessible for them, where they are, how they can play, how they can afford to play. No one's strapping up to go to a gym and start working on their tumbling routine. That's not happening. And the reason that's not happening is because it's expensive and it's hard to access. But if we can say to people, hey, we have an Olympic sport that you can play and play pretty easily. You don't have to pay a green fee. You could just play horse with your friends at a putting course. Whatever. That's what you want out of this if you're golf. At least that's what I think you want out of this if you're golf. So I hope they're willing to go that way. I hope that they're willing to make that change, but we'll see what happens with that once that proposal is formally selected or submitted to the IOC. All right, one quick story in between talking about Keegan Bradley for a few minutes. Talked about the Korn Ferry Tour. They are at the Utah Championship this week, and this is kind of a de facto Tony Finau event. He has an event for his foundation that is on the Monday of tournament week. He's sort of the host, not officially the host, but sort of the host. And this is a good week for him. It's an important week for him. However, sounds like on Monday at the event for the kind of the Pro-Am event for the foundation, there were a number of protesters outside of the host club this week, and all were holding signs imploring him and his family to pay supposed or alleged back debts to people that helped fund not only Tony's pro career in the early years, but also his brother Gipper, and that they have, I guess, according to these people, not paid that money back. And the Deseret News, which is out there in Utah, does a good job. They reported on this. They tried to get some comments from Finau's people, whether Tony himself, whether his agent, whatever that was. They couldn't get anything. They were actually asked to leave the event because their credential for the tournament on the Korn Ferry Tour only starts on Tuesday, apparently. And the Monday event was considered private, and they were asked to leave the property. We don't know the full extent of this, right? Like, they're supposedly people are like cousins and sort of distant family members that are saying, Tony owes money and the Finaus owe money and they should pay that money back, and, the hundreds of thousands. And while at the same time, you've got that. And I thought that was related directly to a lawsuit that was dismissed earlier this year around a statute of limitations from another person who lent money to a corporation, basically an LLC corporation, whatever it was, that was managed by the Finaus to take in money, right, and fund Tony and Gipper's career. And then that corporation folded, and one of the lenders sought money and sought reparations in perpetuity, like 20% of Finau's earnings in perpetuity, and that got dismissed. This is something separate. And you can have that first line of, hey, we've got this lawsuit going from this one guy. He could be disgruntled, he could be off base, he could be lying. I mean, there's all kinds of things here in one situation where you go, okay, well, that guy's just a one-off. Maybe he's just, something's not right there, but his allegations are false. But once you get a group of protesters outside of an event and they're separate and they're kind of saying the same thing, these guys that haven't paid up whatever they've promised, now it starts to become a pattern. And that's something that's got to be addressed. And I don't know how Tony Finau would choose to address it, but at a certain point, once this happens enough times, you kind of got to explain yourself a little bit. You have to say, hey, this is what happened. We got lent money. We paid it back. We swear we paid it back. We didn't pay it back with interest, or we were going to pay it back, or whatever. Especially because Tony Finau has been exceptionally successful in his career. And anything I've ever heard about the guy is that he's a good dude. Now, you hear that a lot in golf, right? You hear that from a lot of people. This guy's great. This guy's great. He's always great. Oh, what a stand-up guy. You hear that a lot. When guys take penalties on the PGA Tour. I took that like a gentleman. And that's just kind of like, whatever. That's not really the case. But everything I've ever heard from people who know Tony Finau is that he's a very good guy. So there is a disparity for me between these two separate groups that say the Finaus owe them money and that they haven't paid it. And Tony Finau being a guy who has raised a ton of money for his foundation, does a lot of good work, seems like a genuinely good guy from the accounts of people who know him well. Those two are incompatible. So what's wrong? And if that means saying, hey, my father kind of overstepped the bounds a little bit in raising money for myself and my brother when we were getting started, it's really on him. Okay, you can come with that excuse, but I feel like the best path of, the path of least resistance here is to say, okay, what do I owe you? I've made $55 million on course on the PGA Tour. I've got plenty of money. If I owe you $250,000, bang, here it is. Let's go. And just get it done. Just be done with it. I don't see the value to your brand of fighting this or not acknowledging it. Just hey, like if you got some people to take care of, take care of them, get them off your back, do the right thing if that's what's needed here. Or if these people are completely off base and they're trying to defame you publicly, say so and say, "Hey, look, I don't know where this is coming from. I've paid it back. Here's the receipts, blah blah blah." It's a bad situation, I think. And it's one that will get more attention the more often this happens. And once it happens like a third or a fourth time, and I'm not saying that's going to, but if it does happen a third or a fourth time, all of a sudden it makes you sound way worse. So this is something that's got to get cleaned up. I don't know how it gets cleaned up, but it's got to get cleaned up for Tony Finau's reputation and his family's reputation moving forward. All right, last thing let's talk about here is something that just came up before we just started the show, and that is that Keegan Bradley is going to get some well-needed experience with a walkie-talkie and a golf cart this fall at Royal Montreal. He has been named a assistant captain for the President's Cup team, the American President's Cup team. He's going to play at Royal Montreal this fall. That's good news. I think that's great for Keegan Bradley. Obviously, he was a surprise pick to be the Ryder Cup captain. He didn't even know he was in the running until he was offered the job, right? And there's a lot on his plate that's got to get done here. Now, he has John Wood to help him in terms of an operations perspective, the former PGA Tour caddy guy who works for NBC and Golf Channel. He's going to be doing a lot of work trying to make things easier for this new captain, right? This fresh-faced captain. But at the same time, you also need to kind of know how this thing really works from the side of the people driving the carts and using the walkie-talkies and those types of things. So this kind of little internship at Royal Montreal in a very friendly setting, right? The Americans are expected to win. They should win. There'll be a great Canadian group that'll be there. It'll be a rowdy crowd. I love Montreal. But the Americans should win, which means it should be a low pressure environment, should be an opportunity for Keegan to kind of learn about what he wants his style to be, how he wants things to be managed, what needs to be managed. And I think that's a great opportunity. This is what they meant when they were talking about the Ryder Cup committee and the continuity between the President's Cup and the Ryder Cup and using those things to play off of each other. And this is the proper use of that, not just kind of bringing guys who have been captain back to be assistants and as potential future, just seat fillers. That type of, no. This is what you need. And you also need to go out there and get some guys who are in their 30s and 40s and who are not going to make this event, who have maybe for some reason could be a part of this in the future, and get them on board, get them inside the ropes, get them experience, help them learn, especially in an environment like this. No offense to the internationals. They've won once and they have tied once in the history of this event. So the expectation is you're going to win, which means you can use this as a little bit of an experimentation. Go experiment, go have fun. I think that's the right call. So good for Keegan Bradley to get that experience, and hopefully more of it is useful for him as he gets ready for Bethpage Black next year. All right, that's going to do it for us today on the show. Thanks so much for watching or listening. I appreciate it. We'll probably not do a show tomorrow with Olympic golf, but we may. We'll see how it goes, since we didn't do one on Tuesday. Otherwise, we'll do kind of voice-only shows the rest of the week. Leave me a comment, whether you catch us here on stream. Love to hear from you. Or listen as a podcast. Leave us a review. Helps us reach more people. Email me, ryan@thegolfnewsnet.com. I'm on Twitter, Threads, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Ryan Ballingy. Facebook, YouTube, Ryan Ballingy Golf. You can find Golf News Net on all those services at the handle Golf News Net. Thanks so much for your time. We'll catch you next time on 2 of the First. Have a great day, everybody.